Hi, and welcome to the first part of my sequencer series. I'm going to do a series of videos and in real time create a sequencer. I'm going to make all the sort of graphic bits in the processing programming environment, and then I will make the sound making bits in the SuperCollider environment. So let's start with the processing bits. I'll probably go for about maybe 20 minutes at a pop, and then just going to sort of stop and then start again until I get it done. All right, so first of all, let's save this as, we'll call it sequencer. Let's maybe go 01 like that and call it, maybe we'll get to the cursor, we'll see. Let's just call it, let's see, frame. Okay, for now, we'll do that. Let's see, tutorials, call it sequencer frame. Very good. Okay. Now, so the first thing we're going to do, and we'll make ourselves a little note, is to create a frame where all the sequencer happens. So maybe we'll just call it canvas or area. Okay. And let's set everything up. Oops. All right, and we'll just make a size 800 by 800 for now. Go ahead and we'll make the background black. Yeah, okay, that should be nice. Now, if I think about this, I basically want it to take the whole area of my sketch size. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, but I don't want it, from edge to edge. So I'm gonna have sort of a border. So why don't I have establish a border size? So let's say a margin maybe. So let's make that a float, because later on I'm going to do some fairly more precise calculations. So I'll make all these things floats, even though pixels are, you can't go half a pixel over, so they are meant to be integers really. But I'm going to do some other calculations that might be helpful to have floats. So I'll just go ahead and start making everything floats. And I'll just call this margins. Okay. Or margin size. Something like that. And let's set that to 30 right now. 30 pixels. If you want to be a proper float, we'll do something like that. And then we'll just calculate the rest from the width of the, the canvas, the width of the sketch, width and height of the sketch. Calculate everything else. So we'll say X. We'll have the sequencer area, maybe we'll call it. Sequencer area, SA X, SA Y, SA width, SA height. Okay, then I'm going to have another series, sort of a bounding box to help me, and I'll just call it left, right, top, and bottom. And will it be helpful to have a middle and a center? Probably not in this case. So let's just so typical bounding box. Let's make ourselves some notes. Bounding box variables. Okay. And we'll call this frame sequencer area. Okay. And that's self-explanatory margin size. Okay, so let's set all these up. We'll go ahead and do this all in setup. We're going to have SAX equals 0, right? We'll start at the left, plus margin size. Okay, well, I'll be very explicit like that, but in fact, it's just margin size, isn't it? And then SAY is the same, equals 0. We'll just copy that, then that'll be easy to do. And then the width will be SAW will equal the width of the whole canvas with the whole sketch, and minus margins times 2. Margin size times 2. Okay, and SAH is going to be very much the same, except it's going to be height this time. Minus the margins times 2 because we're going to have square margins. Great. Now we'll set up our bounding box. So set up bounding box. Okay, and let's make that left equals SAX, right equals SAX plus SAW, so it's the X coordinate, which is the very left, plus the width. Top is going to be equal to SAY, and the bottom is going to be equal to SAY plus the SAH, the height of the sequencer area. And we got them all there. All right, great. Now we can simply draw our sequencer area if you want to. If you want to make it a, for example, if you want to make it a sort of a bordered area, we could do that as well. But I think I'm going to have no border. And so draw and I won't have any border. I'll put in a couple hard returns here so we can get it up the page. I won't have any border, so we'll make a no stroke. Okay, and we'll fill it, and then we'll just draw on top of the fill. Let's do, maybe a brightish color. Should we do that? And then a black? That'll be interesting. Like I said, my son is into this lime green and black. So let's do a background of a lime green, which is 1532550. Okay, and then we'll draw a rectangle, which will be sort of our canvas area. Okay, and do we have to do a rect mode? You know, a lot of times I like to do the rect modes because sometimes I change it later on, and then I forget, you know, where I didn't put it, and then it sort of messes everything up. So I'll go ahead and put rect mode and corner, in case at some point I change it to center, for example. Okay, even though corner is the default. And then we're going to make a rect there at X, SAX, SAY, SA width. So it's convenient to have these things already defined, and you'll see it will help a lot later on. All right, and is that pretty much everything I need? No stroke fill. Yeah, I think so. Let's see how that looks. Right, very nice. So obviously, you know, which is great because it's resizable based on the size of how big I make my sketch on my canvas. Obviously, this is going to be a huge sort of, you know, way too high sequence. So let's just make it, more rectangularly. 800 is fine for the width, but maybe just a 200 or something like that. And let's see how that looks. But you see, because I use this margins variable, it's just going to always inset it 30 pixels, no matter how big I make my setup. So that's pretty good. Let's just keep it like that. Oh, you can maybe make it longer if we want. But anyways, you know, you adjust it as you need, and as your screen, how big your screen is, how much real estate you have. Do something like that. That's quite nice. Okay. Now, and then just keep in mind too, these things really do need to be run in setup. Sometimes you can declare these things outside. You know, the values, you can initialize variables outside in the main root part. But in this case, because we have to set it up first, we have to actually declare our size because this is all dependent on size. So we're using things like width and height. Anything with width and height needs to be done after the size is established, obviously, right? Okay, so we set up the bounding box. We got it really nice. So now we'll just save that there. And then we'll save as, excuse me, sequencer 02. And we'll make this the cursor. All right. So let's save that as a cursor. And right, so we drew our sequencer area, and then we're going to draw a cursor on top of that, which is a very simple line, right? So if we want a cursor right at 0, we'll say make cursor. Okay, we don't need all caps. Okay, So we'll sketch this out. So first of all, we'll probably need a stroke, and we'll make that black. And then we'll need a stroke weight. Let's just go for 3 for now, and then we'll see how it goes from there. And then we'll just draw a line. If we make it right at the very beginning, well, let's just start from here. Let's not mess about here. We're going to have a moving cursor, so we're going to have a CSRX and a CSRY. Well, the cursor is always going to be at the top and bottom, so we don't need to do that. We can make, so remember, line is x1, y1, x2, y2. So y1 will be, y2 will always be SAY, or I can even do top if we want to do that. That's kind of nice. And we'll do cursor x, because it's moving, it's a straight line moving across horizontally, and we'll have it at bottom, something like that. Okay, and let's just see how that looks. Oops. Oh, right, of course, we need to define our cursor variables. And we're going to call this a float, CSRX. And do we need to initialize that? Yeah, initially we're going to have it, we'll initialize it down here once we've established all those things. We'll have it at CSRX equals the SAX. It's going to start at the very beginning of our sequencer area, right? So if we do that, you can't see it because it actually is blending into the background of the canvas. But we'll take care of that later. Well, why don't we move it over a little bit? We'll just say SAX plus 50 for now, just so we can see it. And there you go. There's our cursor cursing through our lovely sequencer area. Okay, put that back. We're going to start because we want our starting point really to be at 0. And let's establish now, draw. Let's, instead of make cursor, let's draw. Let's establish some animation. So animate cursor. All right. We can do a simple animation. We can just do CSRX. Well, actually, you know what? Yeah, well, let's do that. So let's just start with a simple animation right now that we'll just basically completely do away with and update using a different sort of clock, because we want this to be very time-based. I think we want to establish time, right, in beats per minute. But for now, just so we can actually establish some kind of boundary condition so that the cursor loops, it goes all the way to the end and comes back to the beginning. Let's just establish some kind of movement. CSRX equals CSRX, say plus. See, we'll move it quite quick so we just don't mess around. Plus 20. If we're doing that, you'll see it's moving across like that. And then it's gone. Oh, no. So now we're going to have animate cursor. We're going to say loop cursor within cursor sequencer area. Okay, so let's do that. So basically, we wanted to get to the very end, so that it's handy that we have that bounding box variables left, right, top, and bottom. So basically, when we get to right, then we wanted to go back. So if we just use a simple if statement, we say if CSRX is greater than or equal to right, then we will CSRX will be equal to left. Right, exactly. There we go. So now we have quite easily a looping cursor, I think. Yeah, lovely. Very good. Okay. Now, this is obviously not a satisfactory kind of motion. And when we're thinking of a cursor anyways, we're thinking of sort of beats per minute, right? Sequencer, I'm sorry, we're thinking of beats per minute. So that's a little bit trickier there. So at least we have a moving cursor there. But now, in order to actually do beats per minute, we're going to have to establish a grid, really, before we can do beats per minute. And so let's take that up next time in our next edition in part 2 of this series of making a sequencer. So today we were able to create a couple of variables, create a bounding box, create a sort of sequencer area with a bounding box, establish some useful positioning variables, and then we were able to actually draw the bounding box and animate our cursor in a real basic way. Let's slow that down so it looks a little prettier. Let's go to 5, maybe like that. And we made a cursor and actually animated that and looped that within our sequencer area. Drew it and looped it. So there we go. It's running nicely. Okay, well, hopefully you join me next time when we actually establish beats there and then establish a speed for our cursor in terms of beats per minute or BPM so that it could be more of a true sequencer.